Okay, so I now have a second-hand fuel pump that's turned up and the O-ring for securing it. So I'm going to give replacing the fuel pump a try. So again, the symptoms were when it got hot, everything cut out, wouldn't restart, released any pressure that was in the fuel tank, there was none, and yet it wouldn't still start. The fuel priming was only for a second instead of the standard 3. So what I think is the problem is probably the fuel pressure regulator is suffering when hot, or there's a problem in the fuel pump itself. So I bought a whole new fuel pump assembly second hand, and I'm hoping that's going to fix my issue. Again, it's a bit of a hope because I don't really know. There's no way for me to diagnosing it, and the service manual just says for a fuel pump issue, if it doesn't prime for 3 seconds, replace the fuel pump. So that's pretty much what I'm going to do. Now to replace the fuel pump, I've got to take the tank off and drain the tank. So I've drained the tank using a little pump by hand, which I've got to say was a terrible experience because before I broke down, I'd actually filled up. So it took me quite a while to drain the tank by hand. I think it's just might be a little bit left in the bottom. What I'm going to do is I've got these two sides to come off, and then the tank should lift clear once all the clips come out. So first job, as always, take everything apart to get the fuel tank. Down here you can see these are the fuel lines for venting and everything else, so I've made them all nice and loose so they can pull through nicely. And then just underneath here are all my clips. So first job is I'm going to try and get my hand underneath and disconnect everything without putting any pressure on. This is when 3 pairs of hands comes really in handy. Okay. Come on now. Come on. should just wipe that up first. Oh well. Then we've got the two vent lines here. Now hopefully they should just have enough slack in them so I can basically see what's going on. And then it's a bit of residual fuel coming out there. Let's get this disconnected first. Right. It's all disconnected, so let's there we go. Now I've got access to the venting lines nice and easy. There's a clip on that. And because there's a clip on it, I'm just going to pull it straight through. Yep. And that's the tank. That's the level sender there, which I forgot to disconnect. There we go. That's it. So now it's all out. Just a couple of things to point out here. This is the fuel line. As you can see, you just push these clips up on either side and it slides off. Push fit. That's the fuel level sender, I'm assuming. And that's the actual fuel pump connector in there. So hopefully, simple swap out, we should be good. So, these are all 10s, they should just come off. And we'll see what state the fuel pump's in. So I'm really hoping it is the fuel pump, not one of these lines being cleared, but to be honest, not a great way of testing it. By blowing it, air comes through, so that's pretty much all I can do. So now, well, to be honest, this one looks in much better nick than the one I've got second hand. Filter looks clean, the pump looks cleaner. I mean, it might just be where mine was stored, but that looks pretty good. I'll get the two out to compare. So, as you can see, I mean, that's got more black inside of it, but I think that's the filtration thing. But overall, this one just looks a bit cleaner. And then this one came off of an older bike. should just work straight away. But we'll swap them across and see how we go. We're going to put a new O-ring on, because the manual does recommend putting a new O-ring on every time. And the O-ring looks pretty good as well. So put that to one side. So let's give that a bit of a cross with a cloth. A little bit of some kind of residue there. So let me give that a bit of a sort out first with some tissue. And this yellow stuff looks to be some form of Loctite, I would imagine. Or is it just... No, actually, I think that is just where it's... It's just contamination. I'll have a decent look in a second on the bolts. But, and that bit wiped down to create a good seal. And hopefully, this will be that. Let's look at these bolts. Looking at it, I don't know what that comes through. Let's have a look. That's got to be some form of Loctite, hasn't it? Not seen the yellow before. What I'll do is I'll grab my Loctite, put it a bit on, just to get it through, and I shall check what the specs are for torquing all this back up. So 1 second, and we're back. Where was I? Right, so this is Loctited. Now, do I remember the orientation of this? Do I feck? I believe conveniently the bolt pattern only goes one way, so I wasn't sure if it was this way or this way, but the bolt pattern makes it line up in this direction, which is perfect because that was the side to go fuel line. So that's good to know. It's handy for people like myself who didn't pay attention when it's coming out.
Really impressed I put the thread pattern, so it's ever so slightly off so you can't put it around that way. Makes idiots like me life a lot easier. I think they'd put some kind of message on the system. Let's make them up tight-ish. That's alright.
Now I want to set it to 10 Newton meters. Newton meters. That's 10 unit meters. That went surprisingly smooth. So next job, get it back on the bike. It's a little bit of a tank whistle. Let's see if I can hear that. Keys, 1 second. Great, now it's a little bit of pressure build up when I open the tank, which is not great. No, I can't close the tank. That's somewhat disconcerting. Route it around again. That's interesting. Let's thread everything through, get it plugged in again, and we'll see what we're going with. That is not great news. Because if we've got some kind of fuel lock there, what is that? Right. Let's get the easy ones connected up first.
Fuel cylinder. Fuel pump. Shit, I'm going. Oh, right. What's this? Do you know which way that is?
Yeah, there's a little bit of pressure every time I open the tank, which definitely didn't happen when before. So, is it one of these little vents here? Let me get a little pick and look. Now, as I understand it, these two vent lines will come up here. And there's a bit of gump here, which is one of the bits. Not sure how to actually test if they're clear. It's just a case of blowing it. It's going to be really disappointing if all it is a blocked vent line. I'm going to have to do some research on check on fuel lock, because it definitely didn't moan when I had that before. Let's throw some fuel in it. The problem is it's very difficult to replicate the issue. The fuel lock seems like such a weird situation to get into if it's not resolved by opening the cap, which is everything I've read today. It says if you've got a problem with fuel lock, open the cap, see if it still fixes it. Because if you can run with the cap open, that's what fuel lock is. There's pressure inside the tank. That's what running with the cap open resolves. Not sure how much fuel we put in there. There's a couple of litres. Let's see what the old fuel gauge says. Well, fuel tank primed. Yep, fuel tank primes, it runs. Now we just got to check for leaks. It'll be interesting to see if I can build up a bit of pressure here. Seems responsive on the fuel, so it's driving fuel to it. Okay, my fuel light came on because I wasn't putting enough fuel in there. So, no pressure zone when I did that, which is good. Now, let me route all these cables correctly, and we'll put everything back together in a second. Right, so it's been a few minutes now. I'm not seeing any kind of sign of fuel leak around now, which is good. Everything still seems good. So it's now a case of putting everything back together and go get some petrol. So let's give that a go. I know she's a bit cobwebby at the moment. That's because I've not been able to use it for 2 weeks, but that's the fuel pump replaced. Still no pressure build up there. Still primes. Primes beautifully. Still runs. Yeah, I mean, it's not slow to start. Not slow to start, and everything works a treat. So that's the fuel pump replaced on the Versys 650. Hopefully that resolves my issue. I am going to investigate whether or not the fuel tank lock is resolved, if there is a vapour lock in the tank resolved by opening the cap, or if it can be resolved in the lines somewhere there's a lock, because that little pressure thing got to me. Might be just from where I had the tank upside down and a little bit of fluid leaked into the venting line perhaps, and that just pressure needs to be released. Other than that, I'm not too sure what else it could be, but we'll check that out. In the meantime, that's the Versys back on the road.